Well, thank you. Glad to be here. It's so awesome. Let's put on the biggest smile you can possibly put on, all right? And then turn to the person next to you and tell them how beautiful they are this evening or handsome they are. All right? It might be kind of weird if you... person. All right. All right? You are beautiful. You are beautiful. All right? Yeah. I don't know what it means if you don't share with the person next to you. But you have to say it with some strength there. I'm glad to be here. Pastor Alex is awesome, and I think he speaks like 5,000 languages. I speak English and Korean. Right now I'm serving partnering with a Chinese church, which I've never thought I would do, because it never dawned on me that I'll serve in a non-Korean church. But I am, and I'm learning the language. But right now I only know ni hao, right? So that's hi. And then xie xie, thank you. And then... I don't know. And I use that last one the most because people keep talking to me in Chinese and I say, I don't know. Right? But that's where I'm at. And yeah, it has been about 1.5 years since we planted. And it's been exciting. All right. But Pastor Alex, he was serving in Bethel as a mission pastor. And I just love his passion and his love for the Lord. And he goes all over the place preaching and just love it. And it's just a privilege and honor to be here. Right? And it's awesome. But behind every great man is what? A great woman. And someone is even more awesome, right? I don't even know if she's here, and I haven't even seen her. Where is she? Oh, 안녕하세요. Right? So it's awesome to see her and the kids. It's great. Let me introduce my family to you, right? That's my family there, right? The middle one is my wife. It was Mother's Day, so she's in the middle. And then my parents are living with us right now. My 3 kids. The one in the back is turning teenager. He doesn't want to take pictures anymore, so he's way in the back. Nathan. One right above me is Ethan. The second one's always want attention, so he's doing that stuff. And then my daughter is, I don't even get her, because she's so different than the other 2. Well, that's my family, right? That's my family, and it's been great. It's been a great adventure in terms of planning, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But this evening, let's see if we're on the same wavelength, okay? I'm going to show you the next slide. Next slide. Pick a card. All right? I'm going to figure out which one you're going to pick, okay? So just pick one card, all right? Pick one card. Let's see if we're on the same wavelength. Got it? Got it? Next slide. Did I get it? That's pretty good, right? Next slide. If you look at that too long, you'll figure it out. So you can't look at that too long. But here's the deal. What I wanted to do this evening is just come and just enjoy our time together. And when we say the radical call, for me, where does that start? Where does our radical call actually start? Right? And what I know about Christianity is this, that Christianity was never about what I can do or how much I can do. Christianity always was about how much Jesus has done for me, what He has done. And for whatever reason along the way, we have made Christian faith about doing things for God instead of being with God. And we have reversed the role of what we should do and who we should be before God. And we get tired and burn out and a lot of things happen. So we look at a verse like this, Mark chapter 3. It says, Jesus went up on a mountainside and called to Him those He wanted, and they came to Him. He appointed 12 that they might be with Him, and that He might send them out to preach and to have authority to drive out demons. We look at a verse like this, and immediately we go, see, to be a follower of Jesus Christ is to go out and share the gospel and cast out demons and do all sorts of stuff. And we miss that little section that's so precious. In verse 14, He says, I appointed 12 that they might be what? Be with Him. The priority of following Jesus is to be with Him, not to go out and preach first. Remember Apostle Paul? He meets Jesus along the way to Damascus, and then immediately, he gets blinded. He goes into Damascus, and Ananias comes, prays for him. He sees. He immediately goes out to preach, and he almost gets killed. But then God takes him from that and takes him away to Arabia for a long time for him to get to know this God he just met. And then he comes back and he gets almost killed. But but it's okay because he can sustain it, because there is that relationship with God that exists in his life. Ephesians 2:8, we're so familiar with this verse, for by grace are you saved through faith, And then not of yourselves, it is a gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. And we know this, that our salvation is free gift from God. Interestingly enough, Christians are saved by grace, but we try to live by works. We want to do good things for God because somehow within our hearts we feel like if we don't do good things, God will not favor me. God will not love me. God will not be with me. So we want to serve God to gain favor from God. But I tell you this evening, before we even start, I'm going to tell you, Jesus cannot love you more. He gave up His life for you. Father cannot love you more than what He has already done because He has already given His Son to you. You know, I know my parents say this. Koreans had this saying, when your spouse dies, where do you bury them? Where do you bury your spouse? In the ground, right? Isn't that where everybody goes, right? You bury them in the ground. But when your child dies, you bury them where? In your heart. Because they're so precious. I tell you, there are moms here, and I can almost guarantee you, if you have kids, that you will die for your kid instantly if they had need of your life. Dads, I'm not too sure. But moms, I'm pretty sure. Right? I'm pretty sure. Right? I'm a dad, but, Nathan, my firstborn, when my wife was pregnant, she went through 16 hours of labor. And I'm like, man, I'm so glad I'm a male. But 16 hours of labor, and I'm like sitting next to her, and it's just so much pain. And then Nathan just refused to come out. So at one point, the doctor comes and brings a suction. I don't know if you guys seen it. It's basically a plunger, right? Gets a suction and puts it on his head, and they pull him out. And I didn't know that human head was so malleable. So when they pulled him out, his head was like a cone, right? It's like this thing here, right? Right, like this. And I was thinking, what did you do to my son, right? It's like, wow. But the nurse cleaned him up and gave him to me, and she's like, and I didn't know what to do with this baby. It was so much joy, right? So much joy. I think outside of salvation experience and maybe marriage itself, right, on the day, right, and then my son birth, that joy. So that day I determined, man, the way I'm going to parent my son is going to be that I need to pay back for this joy he offered me at that point. But also at that point, I sang him, God is so good. And also there's a song that goes, I want him to be a pleasure to you, Lord. And I remember singing that for him and just humming it. And within my heart, I just realized I can die for this kid. I can die for this kid. And then somewhere along the way, God whispering, Sam, I love you. Just times that by 1 billion, and you kind of get how much I love you. Nathan's 13, turning teenager. He doesn't listen to you as much anymore. I'm not sure if I'm going to die for him anymore. Right? But just kidding. Right? Good kid. But so as we start revival today, I want to say that radical call to follow Jesus starts in this intimate relationship. And it'll continue with this intimate relationship. And it'll end, if there is an end, right? Forever has no end. And it'll continue on forever in this intimate relationship. And that's where I want to settle today. Because I think in that intimacy, all the other stuff falls into place. I think C.S. Lewis talks about this, that somehow along the way, after the first century of Christianity became what it doesn't stand for, right? Oh, let's go to church. Oh, I don't want to go to church because then I can't go here, I can't see that, I can't do that, I can't do that. And he says before that it was about, Jesus, He's love. He's with you. There's peace, there's joy. Let's go to this Jesus. It wasn't about, let's give up everything for the Lord, but it was about, let's find this Jesus. So that giving up becomes a joy for us. Right? So I want to start from there. So I want to say the beginning, the radical following that we're talking about today. Radically following Jesus begins with intimacy and affection for Jesus Christ. And that's so important because I find that when I go to churches and even within my church, I'm always mentioning this because there's always danger within a congregation that we can have a house full of people singing songs, and yet in their heart there is no affection for Jesus Christ. That we can have people know Jesus in the head right here, right? Because I was there for a long, long time. Because I grew up in the church. I knew every story in the Bible, almost, except for Nahum and these guys, right? But almost all the stories in the Bible. But there is no affection for Christ. I remember when I first did youth ministry a long time ago, and we were growing fast. And before I became a youth minister, I didn't go to seminary. I became youth pastor first, and then went to seminary, right? And I was just teaching and preaching about my relationship with God. And once I went to seminary, I learned all these theology and all that stuff, which is very, very important, by the way, right? And learning all these theology. And I knew all this, and I could tell people what Jesus is, Trinity, eschatology, all these stuff. And one day I was preaching to my congregation of kids, and I just realized, man, my heart is dead. I can say every theological stuff, and yet my affection for Christ had waned and died. And I knew I was in trouble. See, we have churches full of people. I don't think Logos Church is one of them, right? Full of people whose hearts are dying. They sing songs like, I will follow you wherever you lead me. And it's a wonderful song, and we will not go, right? God tells Isaiah, whom shall I send? Most people will go, send her, right? Don't send me, right? Because it's easier if she goes, not me. I'll give her money. Right? Have her go, right? So this is where we start, right? If we have no affection for Christ, then we get burned out serving in the church. We get burned out evangelizing. We get burned out. In the beginning, we get excited because this is what God has called me to do. And you're serving. And because there's no love that fuels that serving, what happens after a while, you become two things. One, you're burnt out and you never want to do anything to do with serving again. Or number two, you become very judgmental. Because you're like, I serve 5 hours a day at church. Why aren't you here, So we start from there. Why did we go to church? Why did you come tonight? You did not come tonight to listen to me, right? You came tonight to meet a person. You came tonight to meet Jesus. If you came tonight and just listen to me, laugh a little, and go back, then you missed the point. You came because you wanted to long for this Jesus that you met. And if I would say most of us are probably Christians and you've already met Jesus. And if you remember, just go back to that one point where you accepted Jesus Christ, the excitement and the joy of it. You ought to just stay there and sit there for a while, right? Sit there for a while. In the Old Testament time, what they did is that whenever God did something, they would build these pillars that would remind them of who God is. And we need those pillars. And one of my pillars is that salvation experience. When I was 7th grade, I went to the retreat with our church. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I went there. And I don't know what the preacher said. All I know is at that moment, I realized the weight of my sin. And God says, I'm going to forgive you through my son, Jesus Christ. And I accepted him. That's all I remember. But then for the next 6 months, man, I thought I was on cloud 9. I don't think I touched the ground for about 6 months. There's so much joy in that. I go back to that often. I need to. Because in ministry, there's so much pain sometimes. And I have to go back to that place where I fell in love with Jesus Christ and stay there. I think there are a lot of components in relationship, but I think there are 3 main ones. Can I get the next slide? Right, there's intimacy, there's commitment, there's passion. And I think passion, how long does it take to get a passion? Right? A beautiful girl goes by you young guys, and what happens? You get passion. Whoa. Right? It's biological, man. It's like, boom, it happens. Right? It's like instant. Passion is instant. I mean, ladies, you're laughing because what if a hot hunk passes by you? Same thing, right? Right? Ooh. But your boyfriend next to you, so you can't do that. Right? So, right? But passion is instant. How about commitment? How long does it take for you to make a commitment? Right? So, it takes a while to get to that point, but to make that commitment, let's say, if you're married, you said, I do, that I do is the final point, isn't it? You say, I do, and the commitment is made right there. But intimacy is something that you just cannot gain instantly. Intimacy comes from living and loving and sharing and conversing for a long period of time. And the longer you know, the more intimate, the possibility of more intimacy is there, right? I mean, guys, we don't communicate that well, so intimacy gets thwarted a little bit, right? But if you can communicate with our wives, if you can communicate in a way that, you're on a same wavelength, then the intimacy starts to develop. And intimacy is, you just can't cheat intimacy. And this is what we're called to have. Jesus called us to be with him. and to be with Him so we know this Jesus inside and out, and to fall in love with this Jesus so much so, doing becomes the next step. Because if you love Jesus, then you want to please Him. Isn't that true? When you love somebody, you want to please them. In any relationship, when you love somebody, the natural progression of that love is that I want to please her. I want to please him. I want to please them. All right? When I was in Irvine, somebody bought my family an annual pass to Disneyland. And I hate Disneyland, right? My kids love it. I don't know if you've been to one, but man, it's just like waiting and waiting and waiting. And these rides are not fun either, right? I remember when Nemo ride came out. It was like Yellow Submarine. You might have seen it. You might have been there. You might have ridden one. It just came out. And we were waiting almost like 2.5 hours, right? My kids are like, Daddy, I'm so glad we're here. You know, I'm like, oh my gosh, right? So we're just waiting. And then 2.5 hours later, we get to go into this Yellow Submarine. And we go in there, and it's like, it's pretty steep, and the seats are small. You know, why do big people always sit next to you when it's small, right? So they all sit next to you. I'm big, they're small, but it's all there. And I'm kind of excited now. I'm inside the submarine now. And they close the door, and it goes under. It goes so slow. It's like 2 miles an hour, right? They have to, because that whole thing is so small. So they go under, and they go into the cave, and you're getting excited. I wonder what's in the cave. You make the turn. You know what comes out? Hologram comes out. You look outside, and there's like TV, basically. And you're thinking, I waited 2.5 hours for this? But my kids are like, oh my gosh, it's Nemo, right? It's like, wow. See, I don't go to Disneyland because of Nemo. I go to Disneyland because I want to see that in my kids' face. Right? On their face. Wow. Because when you love, you want to please the people you love. Man, why do you buy flower for your girl? Do you buy because you think the flower is so beautiful and it's worth the money you're paying? You know why you're laughing, right? Because you don't. I have not met a single man who thinks the flower is worth the money, right? Or money is worth, whatever, whichever, right? No, we buy flower because our wives love it. That's why you buy flower. You don't buy flower because you think it's worth the money. I mean, come on, right? Yeah, we'll move on from that. Many of you were dating, right? And that's how you got married, you dated. Do you remember when you first went out with your spouse, guy to girl? Weren't you excited? My wife was 45 minutes away from where I live. Doesn't matter, you drive, right? You drive, so, because there's anticipation, there's longing, there's expectation. Oh, I wonder what she's going to look like today. So you go there and you pick her up. Earlier the better, because you get to spend more time with her. You spend all day with her. You go watch movie with her. 2 hours is too short because you're looking at her and she's watching the movie, right? And you're just like spending time with her. And then the evening comes and you have to drop her off. And now time is like, oh, I have to drop her off. And you finally take her home and you drop her off. You take her to the door. You say goodbye. Asian don't kiss, right? So we say goodbye. And we turn. Why? I don't know why I didn't kiss. Right? So we I guess you guys do. We turned around and you go, and then you see it never happens like, oh bye, you just go. No, you turn around to see her one more time. If it was Korean drama, ding, right? You see, and you go, right? Because you love her. See, that's where we start when it comes to loving Jesus and doing things for Jesus. I don't think church planning is going to happen if people didn't love Jesus. I don't think Pastor Alex can serve as pastor if he doesn't love Jesus. I don't think some of you could serve here unless you love Jesus. And some of the stories I know about here is that you guys went through some tough times, but you love Jesus, so you sustain it. That love has to be fueled. If it's not fueled, then you run on fume. If you run on fume, you just burn out. And when you want to please Jesus, you know what happens? You start to get dreams. You start to get dreams about how can I please this Jesus? His dream starts to become your dream. And even the possibility of seeing that dream realized excites you. Excites you. See, the pattern in the Bible is always this. God loves, so he comes and he redeems his people. And then he tells them how to live as people who are redeemed by him. So you look at Exodus. God goes to Egypt, rescues his people because of his love, and then goes to Mount Sinai and teaches them, this is how you ought to live because you're my people. Jesus did not give us Great Commission first. He gave us which one first? Great Commandment. Love God, love each other, and then you can go and share the gospel. Don't go sharing gospel if you don't love people. Right? Because then all you want to do is convert them instead of loving them. Funny story, because we're starting, right? So every month we have one team go out and share gospel after Sunday worship. And initially, we didn't have that many. We started with 12 people, and we had some high schoolers and adults, and one of the high schooler name is Sam, right? Sam, and he goes out with our youth pastor. And at the time I was preaching to children's ministry, so I couldn't go out with them. He goes out. It's the first time we've ever went out to share the gospel. So I use 4 Spiritual Law. Some of you may know, it's by CCC. And he's going out, and Pastor Dave is teaching him, this is how we're going to do. We're going to approach a person, share with them, ask these questions. And Sam is scared, so scared. So he goes, okay, I'm going to get that guy, right? And he goes there, he follows him. But he never strikes a conversation. He just follows him, all right? And then he goes, right? So this happens over and over again on that one Sunday. And then they're about to come come to church and share their stories. And then Sam is like, I'm going to do it this time. I'm going to do it, right? So they were in front of the Safeway, and he sees one guy, go in by himself. Because when you share Jesus, you don't want to do it when there are 2 people, right? Just always one guy. So one guy's going in, he's following him again. He's going through the aisles, right? You know how it is when somebody follows you? You kind of know when somebody follows you, right? So the guy looks back, and Sam is so scared, he runs out, right? And that was his first time trying to share Jesus with people. It's a scary thing. Next time, he goes out again and again. And now he's able to do it. See, he can't do that if there's no love for God. You can't do that. Sharing Jesus is not easy. Some people make it so easy. It's hard for me. Right? Sometimes you're surprised they even want to accept Jesus. One time I was at a bus stop, high school kids there. And for whatever reason, my heart was saying, hey, you should share Jesus with this kid. Right? So I'm like, okay, I usually carry 4 Spiritual Law with me, and I go over there and say, hey, man, do you go to church? He says, no. Hey, do you want to hear about Jesus? I'm expecting no. He says, yes. Okay. Right? So, first, law number 1, God loves you. He has planned for you. Law number 2, but you and I, we messed up. We sinned, so we can't experience that love. Number 3, that's why Jesus died for you when you receive Jesus Christ, right? You have intimate relationship with him, and so forth. And at the end of that reading, and when I share Jesus, I don't do stories and stuff. I just read. So after I read, and I'm like, hey man, do you want to accept Jesus? And he went, yes. And I was so surprised by that. Wait, what did you say? Right? He said, yes. So I read it all over again, just to make sure. And he received Christ. And that day I just realized, man, it is God. It's not me. Right? It's not me. But see, you can't do that if there's no love inside of you for Christ. I'm not out there trying to convert people. I'm out there to share with them love. Love of Jesus Christ. And his dream is that we will go and seek the lost. See, I said that possibility of dream being fulfilled excites us, right? A friend of mine, he's at the previous church I was serving. His name is Dan. And he married Helen, but this is when they were dating, right? And they dated for a quite long time. And one day they went to Disneyland together. There was a new ride, Indiana Jones, I believe. And they were there all day long. And by this time, I think Helen was imagining and thinking that, man, I can be with this guy. I want him to be my husband, right? And she was thinking this by this time, and she's dreaming about a family with him. Now, he's waiting in that line for a long, long time, and he gets tired, right? He gets so tired, he's like, man, I'm going to rest. And he goes like this. And Helen freaks out. He's like, ah! Because she thinks he's going to propose to her. And Dan's like, no, right? I'm just tired, right? Man, you know why she's so excited? Because that dream. Is this it? Friends, Jesus had a dream when he came to this earth. He said, I came not to be served, but to serve. He said, I came to seek and save the lost. He said one of the last things he shares with us is that you go and make disciples of all nations. And the key word there is not going, by the way. Key word there is disciple making, right? Baptizing in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. And in that process, I'll be with you to the end of the ages. After 3.5 years of loving on his disciples, the last thing he tells them is, now you guys are ready to go. When Jesus came back to Peter, remember Peter denied Jesus like 3 times? See, Jesus didn't go, oh, I wasted my time on you, man. 3.5 years. And you couldn't even defend me? No. He knew the problem was not in the mission. He knew the problem was in the love. So he went, Peter, do you love me? Because if you get that correct, then everything else will fall into its places. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? 3 times he asked him, do you love me? And finally Peter goes, you know I love you. And when he discovered that, he died for Jesus upside down. It's love. It's intimacy. So one of the questions I want to ask you today is, where are you in that love? How's your love level? 1 through 10. 10 being like fiery, hot, die for Jesus. Where are you? Do we need to go to God tonight and say, God, I need you to recharge my love. I need you to do something about this heart of mine. Along the way, I've lost track of what is happening. And I have bombarded my heart with all these activities, and I haven't spent the time and the energy needed to sustain this activity. God, would you help me? Maybe that's where we need to be. When you love Jesus, you want to please Him. When you want to please Him, you'll have a dream emerge. And that dream will sustain you throughout this life. It'll create a lasting passion for you. Each day will matter. Each moment will matter. Sorry, I'm going to talk about just a little bit of my experience a little bit. Bethel, if you don't know, is a very comfortable place, by the way. Right? Irvine is a nice place. One of the top 5 places to live in this nation. Safe place. Laguna Beach was 10 minutes away from where I lived, and I had a house there. And I loved it. And when I felt the call to go to Northern California, my answer is always no. Right? God, no. You know, my background is graphic design. And when He called me into ministry, guess what my answer was? God, no. Right? Because I love design. And I remember specifically in that one day where I was thinking, God, I can't believe I get paid to do this. I come to office in my jeans and t-shirt, 9:30, 10. I get to be creative all day, and I go home when I'm done. And that year, Z3 came out. Some of you remember the BMW, the first edition came out. And I remember thinking this year, that is going to be my car. And that year, God said no. He came and I made a dumb vow when I was, not dumb, I shouldn't say dumb. I made a vow when I was in high school, in senior. And it's dumb because the way that I made it. It was a retreat and the preacher said this, who wants to dedicate yourself to full-time ministry? Why do preachers do that? All right? And, that service, I was like dozing because I was so sleepy. My friend got up. And I was like, okay, I got up, right? And I didn't even know why I got up. And I completely forgot about that until that day where I was thinking, I can't believe I get paid to do this. And then for the next 3 months, I'm struggling. God, no, right? And then at the end of that 3 months, my personality is that I can only do one thing at a time, like most men, right? One thing at a time. Like I look at my wife, like she's cooking, disciplining my kids, on the phone, right? Like I'm like cooking. That's it, right? So, right? And then on the phone afterwards. But I remember, and I went to my boss Lori and tell her, hey, I feel I need to go to seminary, and I had to quit. She wanted me to do part-time. I said, no, I can't do it. But I didn't want to go to seminary, so I told God. I said, God, it's a 3-year program, right? After this seminary experience, and I don't like ministry, would you let me go? So, it's like one person deal with God. God never responded to that, right? Because He knew what was going to happen. 3 years. I wanted to get out there so fast. I finished in 2.5 years. Because I took summer school, winter quarter, summer school. I just got out of there. I remember the last semester I was in the seminary. I was sitting, and Golden Gate is a very beautiful campus. You can overlook the entire city. I was sitting on a bench, and I was thinking, man, where are you, Sam? How's your life right now? Yeah, paycheck is missing a few zeros, and car's, about to die. But there's more meaning and significance in my heart, and I felt that. So I stayed. Same thing when I moved up to Northern California. Bethel is a very comfortable place. You get your own car. They pay for your insurance. I'm like, man. But when I hear the call, because Northern California, it is said that only 5% of young people go to church. And among that 5%, only 4% believe they base their faith upon the Bible. And I remember preaching at a few of those churches, 400-member church, 500-member churches. And they had 12 people in the English service. And I came back to Bethel. And then I was preaching, and then God said, you need to go up. And I hate it when God does that. All this time I've been teaching my congregation, if God called you, you got to go. I never thought He was going to call me. Right? So the last message at Bethel was this: I don't want to go. But I got to go. Because the one I love compels me to go. I went up there in August. And I was looking for a house, and Bay Area is expensive. I don't know how expensive it is here in this area, but it was expensive. I couldn't afford anything, right? I'm looking at all these real estate stuff, and I can't find one that I can afford. So I was at Starbucks, my other office, right? So I go there, and I'm sitting there. I'm looking at all the real estate stuff, and I can't find the house that I can't afford. And then I was, it's horrible when a grown man is about to cry, right? I'm like, getting teary, and I say, God, if you call me up here, you got to have a place for me to live, right? And then that day, I didn't find a place, so I had to go back down. So I flew down to Southern California, and then I got a call. Like, God, why does God always do that? Why don't you do that in the front end, so I don't have to go through all that experience, right? Why does He always do that after I go into that sulking moment, right? He goes, oh, hey, we got a house. Hey, this is all you have to pay. I said, okay, we'll take it. So my kid's school was about to start, so we couldn't move in right away because it's going to be available at the end of September. So we ended up living with my parents for about a month. It's not happy. It's weird when you're 40 and living with your parents and your family's there. So I stayed there for a month, and then because of school, we moved into I don't know if there's one here, but it's called extended stay. You can stay there for about a week. It's like a motel. We stayed there for a week, and I never want to go back to that place again. It smells and strange people come in, and my kids are there. And then we finally moved in. In retrospect, right, it's worth it. In retrospect. At the time, I was like, man. But in retrospect. Because that's what fuels me. And that's what fuels my wife. That's not what fuels my kids. I hope they see it, though. Because my kids hate me right now. They left their kindergarten friends, all in Irvine area. And then we have to move again. And they're thinking, Dad, I hate you. It's okay. Right? They're young. But it's worth it. There's a passage in Matthew where a guy looks for a field and he's looking for a treasure. When he finds that treasure, what does he do? He goes back and what does he do? Sells everything. But there's an attitude that's in there. What attitude did he have when he was selling everything? Scripture says what? With joy, he sold everything. Not grudgingly, like most of the time, I surrender all. And we don't want to. But when you fall in love with this Jesus, even in the midst of that struggle, you will. Because this Jesus is worth it. Just one more story and we'll close. Actually, two. The first person I discipled in Bay Area, his name is Jim, right? And I started discipleship with him before he became a Christian. He came to our church one day. I don't even know why he came because we didn't advertise or anything. He came and I just went up to him and said, hey, my name is Sam. What's your name? He goes, my name is Jim. And then later on he did a testimony. He said, Pastor Sam came up and said hi to me. I have to come to this church. Really? I should say hi to more people. It doesn't work on other people, but for him, it worked. So we started that journey together. In the middle of our discipleship, he wanted to believe in Jesus Christ. And it led him to prayer, sinner's prayer, and then baptize them. And in a year, he's so in love with God. And the first year we're together, I introduced Living Water. Living Water is an organization that deals with bringing clean water to all these places around the world. And when they started, it was 20% of the world needed clean water. Now it's 10%. And however, and God just impressed upon his heart, Jim, that is your mission for me. And Jim's like, okay, I'm going to use he's a very influential guy. I'm going to use all the influence I have to put a dent in the 10%. And within a year, he took a team to Nicaragua to build a well for this particular place. Why? Because he's in love with Jesus Christ. And my prayer as we end today is that's what happens to us. That you fall in love with Jesus so much that after tonight, right, you may go home and whatever, and when you go to bed, about to fall asleep, in that point, maybe you can ask God, would you feel my heart? But maybe you don't have to wait that long. You could do it tonight. Would you feel my heart for you? Would you feel my heart? Let's pray. Just making a moment of reflection. Let's just ask that question. Hey, where are we? Where are you in terms of your love for Jesus? Again, scale 1 through 10. Is it 3? Is it 5? Is it 8? Wherever you are, let's take a moment to say, God, this is where I'm at. I want it to be hotter and more fiery for you, Lord. Would you help me? Would you help me? God, I want to know Jesus more than teaching in Sunday school. Because that stuff will come later. But I want to know you so badly, Jesus. I've been away from you for so long. God, would you call me back? Holy Spirit, would you help me tonight? Let's just spend some time just conversing with Jesus. Because that's how we build intimacy with him and get to know him. Just go to him tonight and just be honest with him as to where you are. And ask him to do something about the heart so we can love him all over again. Yes, Jesus.